Well, hello and welcome to Junk to Jules podcast with Georgette, Beck, and I have a special guest, Claire Faunce. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you, Georgette.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate being here.
I am thrilled, and I can't wait till y'all get to know Claire. So first, let me do some really important introductions here. First of all, she's a beautiful woman of God, faithful, kind, and gracious, and she's serving and sharing her heart with several key ministries in our community. She's a beautiful mama of 5 kids, 12 grandkids, and 5 great-grandchildren. How beautiful is that? Isn't that the greatest blessing in the world to be a grandmama? Yeah, my husband and I, we have the 7 grandsons, 4 girls and 7. So what a treat. So, but looking at you, Claire, can I ask now, if you I share my age. If you're not comfortable, that's fine. But
I'm okay.
But you look like you're in your high 40s there.
Oh, bless you. I'm 67.
Oh my gosh. I'm 55, so we're going to be fair and share. But I'm finding that the older we get, the more we find and beautiful God's work in our hearts has become. And so we're going to talk about a lot of things today because Claire has had an awesome journey in her life. Some junk moments for sure, and definitely so many jewel moments.
Yes. Amen.
So let's dive right in. I know you're involved in her passion project, her passion ministries. It's CareNet Pregnant. They used to be Crisis Pregnancy Services. I used to volunteer there. That was one of the first ministries God brought me to. And they're CareNet now, and they're located in the Treasure Coast. They have several offices, and they help a lot of women and young men and just the family and children. But her other main passion is the prison ministry, and she's going to talk more about that. And she's also involved in the Good Samaritan. So let's, So who are you, Claire Faunce? And let's start your childhood. Where were you born? And talk about your family, and just kind of let's go up through the years.
Okay. Well, definitely, you'll understand as we go through this how God opened the doors for jail ministry, CareNet, and Good Samaritan. Because of my childhood, I one of 12, one of the youngest of 12.
Oh, wow.
And but from 6 months old on, I was going in and out of foster care.
Okay.
Home, foster care home. And as a child, I didn't understand why, my older brothers and sisters were staying home, and it was just me and my 2 little sisters that were.
So the youngest?
Yeah, I was one of there was 2 younger than me, but the 3 of us were going in foster care. And as a little girl, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I wasn't home with mom and dad. And, no matter how bad things were at home, whether we had money or not, I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be home with my mom and dad. And, so, jumping from foster home to foster home and home was very difficult. And, getting honest with my past, I was, being sexually abused at a very young age. So, being tossed to and fro.
Yeah.
And now I don't know who do I trust?
Right.
Because I was so like, my mom and dad don't want me. And then I'm in foster homes when they're, I'm being abused, and I didn't know who to go to for safety.
And how old were you?
Oh, it started at when I was probably 3-4 years old when it started, and went up and for years.
In this foster system?
Yeah, in the foster system. And then it was happening at home.
Wow.
Yeah, but that really put me in a mindset of confusion. I felt kind of like a little, you see the mouse in the wheel, and they're just going round and round, and they don't know where they're going. No. That's how I felt. I felt like that little mouse. But no matter what, I still wanted to be home. I wanted to be home with my mom and dad. And one year, my daddy got us all back under the same roof. My daddy, he was an alcoholic, but he was a funny guy. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't mean. I mean, when he was drunk, he would bring us like cases of soda and chips and put us in the living room and tell us jokes. You know, it was funny. It was, you know, and I really looked forward to that time with my daddy.
And where were you from?
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, Michigan.
I was born in Detroit. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad got us all under the same roof one year, and you know, I was getting a little older at the time, and not into my teens yet, and he said he was going to stop drinking, and I remember thinking that we weren't going to be separated anymore.
Yeah.
And my mom's birthday was December 22nd. And my daddy decided he was going to surprise my mom for Christmas. So he flew my grandma, my mother's mother, in from New Jersey. First time ever on a plane. First time ever in Michigan. And she got there the morning of the 24th, which was the day before Christmas. And that night, I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to stay with my mom and my grandma, hear everything that they said and everything they talked about. And then it was just like they just kept on talking and talking and talking, and really late. And I finally, I was like, I got tired, and I crawled up on the couch and I fell asleep because they were still talking so late. And the next thing I remember was a man picking me up from the couch. And I remember when I opened my eyes, he had this big hat on and a big jacket. And of course, I went into fight mode.
Yeah.
And he said, honey, I'm a fireman. I need to get you out of the house.
Oh.
And he carried me through the dining room and into the kitchen. And we were poor. Yeah. My dad bought a house. I don't know if you ever remember the Jackie Gleason show, where his friend lived upstairs. He lived downstairs. So there was a stairwell.
Yeah.
Well, my daddy bought a house that had the apartment upstairs. He bought the whole thing. And we slept in what was the upstairs apartment. So you had to go through the stairwell. You had to open the door, go through the stairwell. And when he was carrying me into the kitchen, my grandma's body was on the floor.
Oh, when you saw grandma.
Saw grandma. And that night, my daddy and my grandma died in the house
Fire.
Yeah. They had taken me and my two little sisters to a neighbor's across the street. And I'm sure they didn't. They were trying to help, and they put me and my two little sisters in a bedroom upstairs. Well, that bedroom faced where the house, you know, and so I was the oldest out of the three.
Wow.
So I was trying to stay strong for my two little sisters. And I remember seeing that house burn, and I knew that my life was never going to be the same. I knew that we were never going to be a family. And my mom, she lasted about 2 weeks before she had a complete breakdown. And they put her in a facility in Detroit. You know, it was a lockdown back that many years ago. When you had a nervous breakdown, mental breakdown, they put you in lockdown facilities, and they did with my mom. And, you know, we were all taken to, it was kind of like an orphanage home in Detroit for placements. And
there were all 12 of you placed at this time, or?
I had some older
So they were
brothers.
living on their own already?
Well, no, not at that time. You know, I had some of my brothers and sisters, you know, were teenagers. Yes, after the fire, we all had to be placed different places. And it was a nightmare for all of us. I know today more than I did back then, but, the home that we went into in Detroit was like an orphanage, and I knew that I was going to be put back in foster home. I did not want to stay. I knew that, you know, for me, I just didn't want to be used anymore.
Right.
So I had gotten a hold of one of my brother's ex-girlfriends and asked her, did she want to go to Florida? Now, in this time, I'm still kind of being moved around a bit, but they haven't done the placement yet,
Okay.
you know. But for me, thinking about being sexually abused again, I was afraid of the dark,
Yeah.
but I was afraid of the boogeyman, and the boogeyman was
Whoever was not nice.
was the abuse. So I was like, I have a choice, either the boogeyman or the dark. And I opted for the dark. And hitchhiked 2 weeks before my 14th
I was gonna
birthday.
say, how old are you? You were already going.
I was very young and came to Florida. And I actually turned 14 on the streets of Florida.
Oh.
And been on my own ever since.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it would take a long time to tell you a lot of stuff that happened, but I'm sure you can imagine being out there and young. But I can tell you, when I was growing up, I was afraid of God.
Did you blame God?
No.
Did you think God was responsible?
Well,
why were you afraid of God?
and listen, I grew up Catholic. Not that we even went to church,
Right.
but one foster home I was in, they sent me into a Catholic school that was down the street, and it was called St. Veronica's in East Detroit. And I will never forget, I was in the second grade, and the nun, that's when you could only see about that much in their face and their fingertips. And she took a line and she drew a line on the board and she wrote heaven on one side and hell on the other. And on the heaven side, she drew, birds and flowers and the sun and stick people smiling. And then on the hell side, she drew flames and things.
Wow.
You could tell people were screaming. And she took her pointer and she said, good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell. Then she sent us out on the playground. Now, this was a rather large school. So I'm out on the playground. I have no idea. I was doing something wrong because another nun that was out there watching the kids, older nun, came and snatched me from behind, swung me around, shook her finger in my face and said, you're a bad girl. Now, I was just,
They had no idea what they did.
Right. And that was second grade and it stuck with me. So even, with the house fire and everything, I really thought a lot of things were happening because I was a bad girl.
Yeah.
I really did.
No,
I never realized really what you're speaking over children, until I got to be an adult. And I carried that into my adulthood. It really, so I was never chasing after God. I really viewed God as this mean man up there with long way, chasing me around with lightning bolts. You're going to strike me dead any minute. That's how I viewed God. So, I just saw myself always running, just on the streets, running, I lived out in the woods. I slept in abandoned houses. I spare changed on the corner. Not knowing, now I look back and I see how God was protecting me. He was protecting me. But I didn't know it then. There's so many things that happened. I can't even I was raped more than I can tell you and left for dead. But I didn't die. And, yes. I mean, I know what it's like to have a sawed-off shotgun held to my head, knife held to my throat. I know what that feels like. Did I know then that God was watching? No, I did not. And then moving up a little bit, I'm still on the streets, getting into every drug, because back then you got to figure that was in the early 70s. Back then it was, there were drugs everywhere. And not only that, people were giving them to you. It was just so much in abundance. And just to fit in, I would do what everybody else did. Yeah. And that's what I did until what I thought was helping me get through turned into a monster on my back I couldn't get rid of. That wanting to get high to the point of needing to, or I'd be sick.
Right.
That's what it got you. And I thought, so if I leave, if I move, if I just leave this place and go somewhere else, and I left Florida and went out to New Orleans and ended up on Bourbon Street, working in a bar right on Bourbon Street, living upstairs from the bar. Did it get better? No, it got 20 times worse. Then came back to Florida. I was young. I mean, back years ago, the Florida driver's license, they didn't have pictures on it.
No.
No, back in the early 70s, they were peach colored, and they had the state of Florida, like the map, just like the outline of the state of Florida. So when I was 16, somebody got me a fake ID, didn't have a picture, and where it started was in a bar in Jacksonville, downtown Jacksonville. And I had no idea what I was going to be doing, but a girl older than me in there, what kind of bar it was. They had dancers. I was scared. I was only 16. And they pretty much told me it's going to be all right. You just take this.
Another drug.
More drug and more drink, and just get out there and the lights will be on you. You won't even see anybody. And I fell into that world, the dancing world for a while. It was the smallest one there, so they called me Dolly. And just, did I see that I was spiraling down? No. And I told you about going to New Orleans and then coming back to Florida and getting to that place, by 17. Now I'm 17, and there was a big drug bust in Gainesville, federal, and they had a sweep, arrested like 250 people in the hours of 5 and 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then that night, I'm walking down an alley with some people, and we're talking about, what had happened. And out of nowhere, these cars come up, and
more federal agents
with guns, get out. And I'm thinking they're going to get my boyfriend. And they said, Claire Faunce, you're under arrest. And I asked, for what? And they said, perjury. And I had no clue what that was.
Perjury?
Yeah. To aid and abet a sale of cocaine.
Wow.
Conspiracy, not perjury. I'm sorry. The word.
I was going to say that's lying.
Conspiracy. I had the wrong conspiracy, and I had no idea what that word even meant. The last grade I barely finished in school was the 8th grade. When they said conspiracy, I was like, what is that? And so they put me in the back of a car, and I'm not kidding you. It was 19. They put me in the back seat of a car. They drove to the post office. It was cool in the parking lot. Took me from that car, put me in another car. And when they put me in the other car, I noticed the 2 guys in the front, and I knew them.
You did?
Yeah.
The good Noe?
No, they were. I knew them for 6 months. I thought that they were federal agents. And so I was arrested and I said perjury. I don't know why I said it was conspiracy. See, it goes.
So what happened?
So they took me, they arrested me, and they put a hold on my bond. That means if somebody would have had $1 million, they couldn't get me out of jail. So my first experience with jail was federal.
Wow.
No bond, hold on my bond, scared to death, no family down here. And the judge was a hanging judge. Everyone that was found guilty, no one got under 5 years. And I was looking at 5 to 15.
Whoa.
My first time. Not knowing God's protecting me.
Right. That he took you away from it all.
But out of fear, I kept on saying, I'm not guilty. Out of fear. And I stuck to it. And of course, this was God. They brought in Danny, Dave, and then this other informant, but they brought them in at different times. They all told the same story, except one of them gave a different date. So the jury threw it out, insufficient evidence.
So you didn't stay in jail.
That was only God. They had, because the jury threw it out, insufficient evidence.
Right.
I got out. But that was God. I didn't see it then. I didn't see it then that it was God going for something I had no clue what it meant, being in jail, knowing that I'm doing drugs, but I'm 17 years old. I have no family down here. It was scary.
Yeah.
It was scary. But did that stop me? No. Anything, I got deeper into drugs. And then I met a man that was going to be my husband. And I really thought when I met my husband, he was so kind. Most relationships that I was in they were very abusive, physically and mentally abusive. He was kind. Even though we lived in the woods together, but he would go and give plasma. I didn't weigh 100 pounds, so I couldn't even give plasma or blood. I was just, 89 pounds soaking wet, I think. But anyway, he loved me that much to go, and do that. And then, I got pregnant and we got married and loved me and I loved him. And even though things were rough, his mom took us in, not like me, because I came from the streets. So, she did not she just took an automatic dislike to me. And she had 3 daughters. So when I was there pregnant, kind of felt like, the story Cinderella and the stepsister.
Yes, exactly. I understand.
When my husband would be working, I kind of just wanted to stay in the room. But, there's just so much more to it.
Yeah.
But, it was a loving marriage. And I got pregnant again after that. And by that time I had gotten HUD apartment. And I'm going to tell you, getting that HUD apartment, I had never had a place of I was staying in somebody's house.
So you are on your own, or you're still with your husband?
I'm with my husband. And he was working, at that time he was working and we were able to get the HUD, me being pregnant. It's a lot different nowadays than it was back then.
Yeah.
But, we did get a little place and, 9 days after I had my son, my husband was working out of town and I never learned how to drive till I was in my 30s. I wasn't in my 30s then, but the neighbor next door was the maintenance man of the apartment complex.
Okay.
And he always told me, if you ever need to go anywhere, just come and knock on the door. I see now how God had his hand in this because my husband wasn't there. I had no transportation. I got a week-old baby, 9 days, 9-day-old baby.
Do you have 2 children at this time?
No, my son Daniel was with my mother-in-law.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as there's so much more to my story. So, we can't do it all in this time. I'm trying to get to where God's right, where we are today. She did have my son Daniel and, we just at that time couldn't
take care of
we couldn't. We just couldn't. But anyway, trying to make ends meet and he was working. Well, I asked the neighbor if he would give me a ride to the store and I ran back to the apartment and I'm bundling my son up and there was a knock on the door and it was my girlfriend's aunt came over to see the baby. And I told her I was getting ready to leave. And she said, Claire, it's starting to rain a little bit. Why don't I stay here till you get back? That was all we got. We left and you know how Florida is. It'll drizzle, right? And then 10 minutes later, it's like the heavens open up.
Right.
Well, that's what happened. Just a downpour. And we were on a road that was very curvy. and we went around the curve. And when we went around the curve, the car just fished out.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a huge, huge concrete culvert. And up there, they have the big ditches,
Yeah.
big culverts. And when we spun, ran off the road, and on impact, it was my side of the car that got it. And on impact, it smashed in that side. I had the seat belt that just hit around my lap. Well, it smashed in that side, popped the door, clicked that seat belt right up on the impact, and I was ejected from the car.
You would have had the baby in your arms.
I would have had the baby.
The baby would have died.
Would have been with me. So
Oh, that's definitely, oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's a divine miracle.
like I said, I wasn't chasing after God, but I'm going to tell you, I remember this as if it was last night. Now, of course, when I was ejected, I'm knocked out. Well, my body landed at a slant, and there was, the big ditch with water. The guy that was driving, there were no cell phones back then.
No.
The guy that was driving and another guy that saw us go off the road, they were afraid that I was going to slip into the ditch and drown. So they were moving my body. Now I'm knocked out, and I remember this like it was last night. A hand, and I thought the palm was here, one thumb was back here, two fingers were up here, and a huge hand over my face. And I came to when I just long enough to say, put me down, my neck. When I opened my eyes, I could literally feel my neck breaking. They set me back. That's all. I just came to long enough to say that and went back out. I was taken into Shands in Gainesville. Now back then, Shands was the only Shands that was in Florida at the time. And Mayo Clinic, the only Mayo Clinic back then, was in Rochester, Minnesota. The break was so bad, they flew a neurosurgeon in 24 hours.
Your neck break.
But yeah, from Mayo Clinic. Yep. And this doctor, now doctors don't talk like this, but this doctor walked into my room and looked at me and said, "Young lady, I hope you don't think that any man in this hospital saved your life." And he pointed up and he said, "Because in my book, you should not be here right now." And then
he told the truth.
Yes. And then he says, now this is a doctor. Mind you, I wasn't chasing after God. He proceeds to talk about the old Bible days. He said, back in the old Bible days, if they hung a man and a man lived, they would never rehang because they believed it was God's will that he lived. He said, "You young lady had a hangman's break." I had a hangman's break. My neck, I C1 and 2. So, and then when he said that, I remembered the hand, and I told him about the hand, and he said that was the hand of God or one of his warrior angels. He said, if you would not have come to for that second, he said, if they would have moved you a fraction of an inch more, it would have severed your spine. You would be dead. So I only came to long enough to say that.
Awesome.
Now,
and that helped them to stop.
Right. So that, but do you think that, so here I am, I'm in that broken neck. All I can move was my eyeballs. 9 days after having a baby, I had no concept of time whatsoever. So, just to move it up, because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I had no concept of time. I didn't know if a day was a week was a month, or a month was a year.
So your neck healed all the way?
It took a long time. Wow. But while I was in the hospital, my husband was murdered. Oh, yeah. He was, yeah.
That's a lot to take in.
He was shot in the head, stuffed in a sleeping bag, and buried in a shell grave 12 miles from where we live.
And is that from the people that were surrounding you guys? Where the influences?
Not good influences. He was a very quiet guy. How his body was found And it was 2 weeks later. Now, mind you, he was there and then he wasn't, but they had me so
Medicated.
heavily medicated. I didn't know, all I know is that he was there and then he wasn't. And at the time, I had no concept of time, but a guy was walking his dog and, alongside by the woods. And dogs, when they smell, it was a German Shepherd. And the dog started smelling a certain spot and he started digging a little bit. So the guy's looking and he's like,
what do you got there?
What is that? And he noticed it's a sleeping bag, it's material. So he did call the police and they, found my husband's body. So now I do become angry at that.
Poof.
Then I did. Then
that's it.
And that happened. I was like, why didn't you just let me? Why didn't you just let me die? It was, and so, did it change me, the fact that I lived breaking my neck and that I could walk? No, I was angry. I was angry because I wasn't a mother. I couldn't be a mother. I just wasn't the person that I should have been. And I just didn't want to be here. But God kept me around for a reason. So now that I don't have my kids, my mother-in-law, she gets custody, because as far as the courts go, I didn't know how to fight. I did not know how to fight. Back then it wasn't every other commercial lawyers.
No, there was no help for the moms to keep their children or dads.
No,
there was no guidance. There was no counsel.
No.
And you were just left. And usually a lot of times parents just made decisions even when they weren't a parent, because they were the adult, perceived as the adult.
Yes.
You had no choices. You were not mentally understanding your life at this point either. No.
I really wasn't.
No.
But, I look now and I can see that God had a plan and a purpose. When that happened, losing my children. And then I really viewed myself as I'm never going to
reiterate. It reiterated the lie that you had perceived as truth as a child.
Yes.
And I love how God, Claire, we didn't get to it, we're coming to it, but God slowly, when he first starts healing us and loving us, when we say, yes, Father, I receive you, Jesus, be my Lord. I don't understand everything, but be here for me. He unravels the layers little by little, and he reveals truth.
Yes.
His truth.
Amen.
And he exposes the lies.
Yes.
So you're out on your own again.
Out on my own
still
again.
In Florida, right?
Yeah, to get God. I don't know, but in between, I had gotten pregnant, and it seemed to happen to me. Yeah. And this woman took me in, and, I didn't see it at the time. I thought she was there to kind of help me, but really what she wanted was my baby. Of course, I am so kind of blind to what's going on and not having money. And so, I lost that baby too, and getting to the point of, after that happened, I was very controlled by men. I would get in relationships that, and I tell you, as a habit. Yeah, I would have had as many.
Strong people represented a strength you were wanting for yourself, I think, maybe.
Yes. But how many times I got pregnant? So many. And in bad relationships. And the one that, they drive me to the abortion clinic, and, one, and get me so doped up and tell me I go in there and do it and pay for it. And then the one took me to the abortion clinic, wouldn't go in with me. I had the abortion, and when I came back out, he was so mentally abusive. When I came back out, he got in the car, he looked at me and said, baby killer. After he drove there and sent me there.
That's
So
mentally abusive.
it was
That is
very,
abuser.
very, and I would never, so now I'm seeing myself as, I can't be a mom. I wasn't a wife. I, had these abortions, and it threw me deeper into the dark world, just darkness, went back to New Orleans again, thinking that if I just leave again, change. If anybody knows anything about New Orleans, when you not just visit, but it's pretty dark there, pretty dark there. And I know because of the sexual abuse as a child, they did not like a man to put his hand on me, so I never gave myself away like that for money ever. But like I would tell the girls in the jail, and we'll get to that, I was just as much as a prostitute because I would, in my mind, if they had a pocket full of drugs, I would take enough to where they didn't look so bad. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm taking the drugs instead of the money. So yeah, my world just continued to get darker and darker. And I think really what started to change for me is the arrest. I was arrested
Again,
a few more times with drugs. And then the last time that I was arrested for drugs was 1986. And I had to have a paper sign. They told me about AA and NA. And that
Alcoholics Anonymous,
Alcoholics Anonymous and narcotics. And I never heard of that. And I think that's where God.
Some of the light came.
Right. I mean,
and they talk about God.
Oh yeah.
Program.
Oh yeah. And I remember when I went in there, my very first meeting, there's so much that happened in between. But I remember going in there, seeing that, but hearing people talk the way that they talk, I'm like, how do they know me?
My goodness.
Like they're telling my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the places God brought me to, because I came from the family of alcoholism and alcoholics. And all of a sudden you're around people who are talking like you or acting like you.
Yeah.
And you don't feel so weird or strange.
Right.
Because there's a certain mentality that happens when you come from families of drinkers or addictions or obsessions.
Right.
And so, and they're kind of very welcoming, aren't they?
Yes. Oh, the love. The love that you feel there. I felt more love in those rooms than I ever felt at home many, many times. But getting back, I know it because we were talking about kids now and abortions. My last abortion, it was a botched abortion. It was a botched abortion. Yeah. I had an abortion in Florida and went out to Houston, Texas, less than a week later after having the abortion. And, just doubled over in pain. And I was rushed to the emergency room in Houston. And the doctor was just cold. He came in and he goes, got bad news. You're pregnant, but the baby's dead. And I said, I can't be. I just had an abortion. He said, like it was nothing. He said, then you were pregnant with twins. They got one. They didn't get the other. We need to get that baby out of you. You got to remember this was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have the technology.
It wasn't like the technology that they have now. No. So the reality of what I had done, because mind you, anytime that happened, the man would drug me up so much. It's just like no feeling.
Yes.
No feeling. I don't feel. But the reality of what I had done, it just really hit me. And then I came back to Florida after that was done. Now I'm on the streets in Daytona. I mean, I'm working in a bar. I was working in a bar, but still pretty much on the streets because all my money went to cocaine or heroin. I was never drink, that was like, nah. Even 'cause I bartended. It was like, it was the drugs. Like that was my problem because that's where all the money went. So here I'm sleeping on people's couches and just wanting to be loved. So of course I was promiscuous because I thought that was love. I think that's love, and got pregnant again. Now I don't know what I'm doing. I had a botched abortion. I'm like, I can't do it. Do I see God's hand in this? So I'm in Daytona. I'm pregnant. The guy is gone. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I just could not go through it again.
Right.
So I'm walking down Main Street, and it's the time of year, there's a certain time of year in Daytona that you can throw a stone from one end of Main Street to the other and not hit anybody. Well, it was that time of year because, the other times it's so
season.
So
Call it.
it was off season. So it was an off season time. And I'm walking down Main Street crying, and I don't see anybody. I just remember crying. And I'm at a light waiting for the light to change, waiting for it to turn red so I can walk across. But I'm bawling my eyes out. And this angelic voice behind me says, honey, what's wrong? And I turn around, and this woman is standing there, and she put her arm, she had a nice pantsuit on, just real dressed really nice. And I'm crying, and she put her arms out like that. Don't know the woman from Adam. And I just fall into her arms and weeping. And she walks.
It's a divine appointment.
It was a divine appointment.
Divine appointment.
So she walks me over there was a bench on there in the corner. So she walked me over to the bench, and she's let me cry. And I'm like, I'm pregnant and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, I'm only in Daytona for the weekend. She said, I live in Miami. I'm from Miami. She said, I have a very dear friend in Miami. She's a lawyer, and she deals in nothing but private adoptions. Would you like me to call her? And you know what her name was? Helen Hope. Her last name was
Helen Hope.
Helen Hope was her name. Yep. Helen Hope. She was a private attorney for adoptions in Miami. She flew into Daytona on a private jet, her own plane. And within a day, they had me in a little studio apartment, had a good doctor. And then they brought files in with families that wanted to adopt. And so I'm looking through these files, and I picked this one file up. Now, mind you, I'm not running after God. So I'm not asking about religion, nothing. So I pick up this one file, and it was a couple that had been married for 9 years. She could not get pregnant. They were trying to have a baby. She could not get pregnant. They went through in vitro, and it failed. A year prior to me meeting me, they had gone through a private adoption, and the girl changed her mind right after the baby was born. So they tell me everything about the family, the assets. He was a lawyer. She owned her own business. They owned a home in Connecticut. They owned a home in Miami. They told me everything about them except their names. Okay, all right. And, their assets and everything. And I'm thinking, this baby is going to have everything she needs and probably everything she wants. So by, later on through the pregnancy, they had moved me to New Smyrna. Mm-hmm. So the night that I went into labor, Helen Hope flew in and was with me when I had my daughter. Beautiful, beautiful baby girl. And I had her in my arms. And I looked at Miss Hope, and I said, I can't do it. I can't give you my baby. And she wasn't angry, but she said something very profound. She said, Claire, this is your daughter, and you can take her, but where are you going to take her? We're going to give her. And my whole life flashed before my eyes.
Yeah.
The children I've already lost, the dope houses, the woods, being hungry. And I looked at that baby. She deserves better. When I handed her over, and I'm telling you, when I left that hospital, hated myself.
That's the gift of love.
Never in a million years did I ever
That's
think
love to sacrifice your heart for hers.
for hers. And then never in a million years did I believe this was going to happen.
Oh, praise God.
15 years ago, that little girl, who's not a little girl anymore, she found me. And my daughter is an actress and she's an actress and singer on Broadway.
Praise God.
Okay. She
How beautiful.
sent me the most beautiful letter thanking me for giving her life and an amazing life. Not only that, but when I went away for inner healing in Jacksonville at a place called Teen Challenge Women's Center, she was doing a Broadway show for 30 days in Jacksonville. She called Corporate Teen Challenge and said, my birth mother is in there and I want to see her while I'm there. And you were not allowed to see anybody your first month. And I'd only been in there for 14 days.
Wow.
When they let her come. I've got to see her. And
You got to see her.
and oh yeah, and not only that, but since God has been doing amazing healings in my life, I got to spend 2 weeks with her last April.
Beautiful. How beautiful.
Yeah, so I know I'm kind of jumping all
It's
over
okay,
this place,
so-
just like I
Yes,
said perjury
it
instead of
sounds the jewels
conspiracy.
galore.
Yeah, it's so much.
Oh, God brought it full circle back for you.
Yes, I'm telling
That's
you.
every mama's heart, is that we want the best for our
For
babies.
amen. Never in a million years did I ever think all 5 of my son Daniel, the last time I saw Daniel, he was 5. He's 48. He's been calling me all the time. So I've had a connection with every one of my
Beautiful.
children that I never
Beautiful.
read with.
That's beautiful. That's God's forgiveness, grace, mercy, reconciliation. He promises, Claire,
Yes.
as you know and I know. We each have our own story, but God restores our destiny purpose. God restores dreams. God restores loss. It may not be the exact situation, but he restores it in his beautiful way. It's beyond our imagination and it's for us. It's for his children. And that's why trusting in God becomes easier the longer we walk with him.
His timing is perfect.
So you left that hospital.
Yeah.
Let's summarize and bring us to current day. But
Okay.
you're at that hospital, that happened,
Okay.
but you have to feel a little different now because you had such hope. A big seed of hope, I think, was planted in you and you did a whole different decision. So it's kind of like you're shifting a bit.
Yeah.
Don't you think that was the start of maybe a shift?
Well, I look back and I think a lot of people would see it as selfishness. And I'm sure
I didn't.
no,
Not that act.
yeah. I mean, not with my daughter, but
Right.
I mean, like not, taking my kids.
You couldn't.
That I couldn't.
No,
I
you couldn't. So I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
But I can understand other
Some people have
it's
said that,
judging it
yeah.
without the understanding
Yeah.
of the whole understanding of the situation.
Right,
But
right.
you weren't there yet mentally or
Right.
emotionally or physically.
Right. I don't even think I got to the place of hope. I mean, after Erica found me, that's when I did start feeling a hope in me. There was something in me that had so been wanting to change.
Mhm.
I mean, I did. Yeah. Getting arrested and then I would, ODs and almost dying and not dying and then going into detoxes and going into hospitals and really wanting a change. But there was something that I just wasn't getting,
Right.
he didn't give up on me.
No, we
And
didn't.
I think how I see as tough as it was and as many times as I fell, kept on getting back up. And I know today that's what matters. It's not how many times you fall. It's how many times you get back and you keep going no matter what. And by me doing that, I know he was always there. I didn't see that. then when I got to that, especially after, I don't even know if you know how I got into the jails.
No.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I first met you at Morningside Church, that's where God brought me for my
Yeah.
rescue mission.
Yeah.
And I was beautifully transformed from beautiful women of God and men of God.
Yeah.
They embraced my daughter and I as my first marriage fell apart. And that's the story in the book. That's Junk to Jules book, but
Right.
is people of God.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
Love
All
us through
people
it.
of God.
Yeah.
And that's what we're called to do. And it's funny how he uses our own very pain and our wounds that he healed us from to serve. Because we know. And so I met you through, there was Celebrate Recovery. There was the Ladies Bible Study.
Ladies of Legacy.
Yes, Ladies of Legacy. And we all got to see each other go from Junk to Jules.
Yes.
We were part of our transformations together.
I was
And
still
then,
going through
yeah.
the struggles, but still hanging, going.
It was
Pushing in.
Yeah. So you want to start there? Was that your first church that God brought you to?
No. I think it was my first church I started to get serious.
Okay.
I believed that when I got saved, I asked Jesus into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I was really strung out. I was really bad on heroin. And, I don't even know how old I was then.
When you invited Jesus in your life?
Yeah. It might have been 18 or 19.
Okay.
And I ran into, walking down the street, ran into somebody that I had met when I was younger on the street. And when I knew her, she was like high-class prostitute, beautiful. And then I didn't see her for years. And I see this woman walking towards me. Now I'm sick as ever. And, she had long hair when I first knew her. Now her hair's short and it's curly. She had prom and she's got this big smile on her face, and she called herself Barbara when I knew her. Her real name was Barbara. And she came walking up to me. She recognized me and said, "Claire, it's Barbara." And I looked at her because I'm like, she goes, "Barbara." And I just did not recognize. Well, she had gotten saved. And she had gotten married, and here I'm on the street, sick as a dog. She took me home with her. Her dad was a pastor, and we went to his church.
Oh my goodness.
The next day.
Beautiful.
And they laid hands on me. I know that's when it happened because I was sick, physically sick, and they were praying over me. I was like almost on my face, crying. I could feel them laying hands on me. But when I got up and I walked up, sickness was gone. I was healed. Sick. And I stayed at her house and I ordered 500 pens, and they all said, "You've tried everything. Why not try Jesus?" So now I'm going to go save all my friends. Well, you don't do that when you're only, a couple weeks. And that's what I did, which took me, I went to what we called the shooting galleries where they were doing, trying to save those people. The bar that I worked at, trying to save those people. Going to another.
So that was your first reaction after receiving Jesus. You wanted to go help everybody out.
To go
help rescue them all. And that's your heart today, Claire.
Yes.
You're still wanting to help every heart.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. So now we are going to fast forward because the time is just going, but your life is so rich.
It's so much. I just don't,
And so the prison ministry, you're loving on the women, broken women who feel they're believing lies too.
Yep.
They're all find themselves in various situations.
Oh yeah. I think they're worthless. Like they have,
and it's not true.
No, it's a lie from the devil. And that's what I tell them. And to be able to share with them what God has done in my life, to give them hope.
And so do you go in a couple times a week?
I go in Mondays. I do the spiritual dorm. Tuesday, I do chapel. Wednesday, I do one-on-ones. And Thursday, I go into the drug dorm.
And this is our St. Lucie County jail.
St. Lucie County. And I'm affiliated. I was with Martin County. just back up real quick. I have to tell you this, how I got into jail ministry. I wouldn't go near a jail. I would honestly, I thought
I would be a little afraid.
I wouldn't go near a jail because I thought they would keep me on a warrant I forgot about. So I was actually in recovery for 3 years in Stewart, one night shy of picking up my 3rd year medallion. And I was working at, where you were at, International Fine Art Expositions. They put on the big international
Palm Beach
Art Antique show.
When I was a youth sponsor at Morningside Church, one of the other youth volunteers gifted me that ticket. That was the first, I call it heaven on earth moment. Daddy God hooked me up. Claire, when I first walked through that very first year, you have art from all over the world.
All over
Monet, my favorite artist, is hanging jewelry. I was like, Daddy God, this is heaven on earth. So you got to work with that.
I tell you, this how I got this job. Now, mind you, my son TJ, my last son, who I did, TJ, I was a single mom. TJ was only about 7, 8 years old, and so I'm cold call. I'm just knocking on doors, and International Fine Art Expositions was in Sewell's Point. And I walked in there, and it was Leanne and David Lester that started that. And anyway, I walked in and they said, it's an art place. Do you know anything about art? I said, I don't know a thing, but if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to learn.
What a wonderful experience.
Well, it didn't start out like 6 foot. So Leanne Lester, because it was upstairs from a bank, in Sewell's Point, So, David Lester comes out of his office and he goes, I don't need anybody here that doesn't know about art. So I walked out the door and I'm standing waiting for the elevator to come. And Leanne Lester, his wife, who was the vice president, comes out and said, what would you think about stuffing envelopes? And I said, listen, I'll do anything. I'm a single mom. So I started out stuffing envelopes outside of her office. Within 6 months, I was her administrative assistant.
I love it.
And then I was running the promotional department. All guys. But here's the thing, because during the art shows, I was working 7 days a week, cramming for the big art shows.
Yes.
So now
you're learning all kinds of skills.
I'm learning all kinds of skills.
Good skills.
But now I'm not going to church. I'm not going to meetings. I would get there at 8:30 in the morning, and many times just before an art show, I was cramming. I wouldn't leave there sometimes till 10, 11 at night.
A lot to do.
It was a lot because it's galleries all over the world. So we're trying to, so that's what I did. A lot. So one Saturday that I was working, I remember 3 days before that Saturday, I was like, because of the show, and I was home, and I remember I was on my knees and I said, God, make this stop.
Yeah.
Make this go away. I felt like I wanted to jump out the window because it was just like so much. And Saturday I got off of work and I was leaving. I was pulled into the store. I was going to just buy a soda before I went home. And I am not a drinker, but one drink would awaken. And I went in and my eyes went down. I was everything, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, all of it. And my eyes went right down to this little pint of wild Irish rose. No thought.
Oh no.
I picked it up.
Automatic.
I picked it up. I went and cause I was like this, and I went out to the car. I drank it, and that was it. I was like, I've got to go get some, and back then it was crack because that was the thing. And I'd been clean in Stewart for 3 years. So I'm like, well, there's a Martin Luther King Boulevard in every town. So I went down there, and I got to tell you how God works. Right. But so it didn't happen right away. I actually, I bought it, or I was getting ready to buy it, and somebody screamed 86 and there's police. So I took off and the lights come on. Now I don't have anything.
That's good.
But I lied. What drug addicts do. I said I was down there looking for my son now, who's at that time, my older son was a teenager, already married in North Carolina. So I said I was looking for my son. What do? They let me go. I go back around the corner and I get it. And I have it in my hand. I get on East Ocean Boulevard. I'm looking up, don't see anybody. So I'm like, I go home and I do this and I'm all by myself. I've got to come down. So I'm like, well, I better stop at the store. And I still have it in my hand. So I pull into now a 7-Eleven off of East Ocean, close to my house, and buy a 6-pack beer, still have it in my hand. Well, on the cop that had pulled me over, and we're friends today. We are friends. His name was John Reddick. So evidently there was somebody that was watching all this happen, because there's what they call snitches, but I guess somebody saw me come back around the corner. Somebody had called. So now this deputy that had let me go, now he's mad. Now he's got all his buddies looking for me. Still have this in my hand, got a 6-pack of beer, open up the door and you would think somebody murdered somebody, the whole parking lot. And I still have it in my hand. Parking lot full of police, right? So there's John Reddick, the one that had let me go. They searched. I still have it in my hand. I could have swallowed it. It was so little bit, but see, I didn't. So they searched my car. I'm going like this, and one of the other cops goes, "Open your hand." He said, "We don't play that." And Stewart arrested me. Now, I didn't get to tell you about my godparents. It was a couple that kind of like adopted me. Just real quick. They were like the parents I never had. They did so much for me and helped me. They were so proud of me being in Stewart. They're the ones that took me to Stewart. My son, they took TJ. TJ was in Samaritan Home for Boys while I did my first year in recovery. And then, then going to work, they just backed me all the way. And they were very wealthy people. They loved me. Their money meant nothing as much as their love meant to me. They were so good. But to call them and tell them, so anyway, I get arrested. But now I had a lot of friends in AA. I was very involved before I started working at IFAE. So I knew a bondsman that was in AA. So they arrested me, but I didn't even go upstairs. I got fingerprinted mug, and that was Saturday night. Sunday night was my home group. And I knew I was supposed to pick up my 3rd-year medallion that night. And I go down there. They got a cake.
Oh my
Place is packed.
You still went.
I still went.
And you were going to tell the truth.
Yeah. And my sponsor got up there and said, "I have a medallion for this lady that has worked so hard to get where she's at today." And I stood up and I said, "I can't take it. I went to jail last night." You could have heard a pin drop in that
But
place.
the humility, Claire.
I had to. And you know what? I'm so glad I did, because you wouldn't believe
That
it.
set you free.
It set me free.
And helped
also,
so many others.
look, I had people come up to me and said, "I've been lying." People told me, but yes, it did. And I knew that I had to get honest with my godparents. I know it was going to be in the paper. And, instead of being angry at me, they got me a lawyer, and they got me a good lawyer. And because of my past, Florida goes on the point system. The fact that I had a federal charge years ago, in and out of jail, I could have been clean for 10 years.
Wow.
They were still wanting to give me time in prison. And I was definitely looking at prison time. So I had rededicated my life to Christ, did not lose my job, which was amazing.
That's a miracle.
And I got honest with them. They did not fire me. But I told them, I said, "I cannot work past 5. I can work on Sundays, but I can't work on Sundays."
You were learning
anymore.
about healthy boundaries.
So I'm learning
your
about
mentality.
that. Yes. So I'm now falling into that. So
You had such good people God put in your life.
such good people. So I'm on my knees in my apartment the day that I'm going to get sentenced. The state wanted to give me 3 years in prison, and they were not coming off of it. I was on my knees in my apartment waiting for my ride to come pick me up. And there was nobody with me. And I meant it from the depth of my soul. I said, Lord, if you mean for me to go to jail today, use me in there. If you mean for me to be out here, use me out here.
Amen.
As God is my witness, the voice was so prevalent.
Amen.
I thought a man was standing behind.
No.
Said, you're not going to jail, but you're going to jail. And I jumped up and there was nobody there, but I'm like, I'm not going to jail, but I'm going to jail. But no, so I'm like, and I'm shaking. I'm like, Lord, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Exactly that.
Right? So we go to the courthouse, right? 6 people in front of me. Every person, either they got a year in the county or they went to prison. It's my turn. Now it's a still small voice. You're not going to jail, but you're going to jail.
Yes.
And so I'm like, Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. So I go before the judge. Judge looks down at the paper, looks back up at me, looks back down, and looks back up and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get 3 years. And I thought, probation. And when you leave here, I want you to go directly from Martin County Courthouse to Martin County Jail. And I want you to meet with Chaplain Elsie Campbell. And I want you to do 40 hours with inmates under the age of 23. When the judge said, I went, I can do that. I went down to the jail. Here's LC, flat top. He's in full uniform, calls me back to his office, and he looks at me, and he's got his arms crossed, and he goes, I've been with this department. I don't know if he said 22, 32, but it was a lot of years. He goes, whatever, how many years? He goes, I have never heard of a convicted felon getting sentenced from the courthouse to the jailhouse. He said, you're not even allowed to come into this jail on probation. God's got something for you to do.
Amen. He does.
And my 40 hours turned into 7 years at Martin County.
Isn't that wonderful?
That's where it's
and that's where God puts you.
Yeah.
Not in jail, but in jail.
Yeah, not in jail, but in jail.
And all the parts that you've helped transform. Just like he had people come around you. Now you're that strong woman that knows the truth of God's love. And through the years, you learned that he loves you through and through.
Through it all.
And forgiveness wipes it all. And Jesus coming for us, Jesus dying on the cross, his blood covers us.
Amen.
And then now you help Good Samaritan, CareNet.
I love
all of it.
I'm so grateful.
The women, so CareNet, they provide free ultrasounds. They help all married couples, unmarried, single moms, dads with their kids, with food, clothing. They'll give referrals in the community. And they also encourage adoption over abortion. They are pro-life. There's other options. There's hope. They give hope and help. So they're not alone.
He doesn't
whoever comes. No, he doesn't. No.
To see what he's done, but the fact that I've been through abortions and had a baby that I put up for adoption, he's using that to be able to encourage these girls that
all of it.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Life is a gift, and he has given me such a gift. Yeah. Even when I met you at Morningside, and I was with the jail van at Morningside at Martin County, still didn't realize that I had not gotten inner healing.
Yeah.
And that's one
thing you would say to someone right now, someone who is in a very difficult spot. Here's the deal. The healing doesn't happen overnight.
No.
What it is God has a hold of us, and we learn trust, especially if people broke trust and boundary. He surrounds us. That's what he did in my journey too. It was go to this free counseling.
Yeah.
Go to Alcohol's Anonymous, go to this small group. So he heals us. He loves on us and brings people into our life to speak life. And then slowly he asks us to start serving.
Yes.
Even when we're not ready, but it's when we're a little bit ready, because that also brings healing to us as we're helping other people.
Absolutely.
So showing up for that service. And then it's a lifelong journey.
It is. And
it's a love story.
Yeah.
God comes in and rescues his daughters and sons over and over, and he does never leave us.
No.
And I thought when I first failed after his rescue, like he was taking care of my daughter and I, and nothing made sense financially. I was the goody, like I tried to be a good girl always. I messed up and I thought it was over. I thought I was not going to have help no more. That's when I learned he doesn't leave.
He doesn't leave, because I felt,
And
I
it's
told
through
you,
that love.
amen, because Martin County, and then after, falling off myself, and look what God did. He restores,
Yes.
and he takes me right back.
Did you have a favorite scripture or?
Oh, yes. My life scripture when I was at Teen Challenge Women's Center was Isaiah 40:31. Yes. Because he has given me, I will walk and not, run and not become faint. I don't know how to say it exactly.
Yeah, that
but,
one you'll soar as eagle.
yes, I'll soar like an eagle. And that's how I feel like he's doing with me.
Yeah. And it gets better every
it gets
year.
better. I mean, I'm getting older and I feel like I'm running.
You're more on life. I think you're running more than me. And
I love it, though. I
the
love
energy.
it. I
And
love
your
it.
sparkle in your eye, Claire, is the love of God
I
through
love
and
him
through.
so much.
And he loves you and he loves all of us. He loves you out there. So what would you say to someone who's listening or watching right now that they feel alone, they feel unworthy, they feel no one's ever going to love them, they feel hopeless?
What I would say, never, never, ever give. Because there's nothing that you've done, nothing that you will ever do that God is ever going to leave. Nothing. He is there with open arms, ready to embrace you. See, we run from him. He doesn't run from us. We turn around. If we run to him, he has his arms open wide. So if you're feeling hopeless, and if you're feeling like you just can't go on, just cry out to Jesus, because he's listening and he's there. And there's always hope.
Amen.
Always hope.
Amen. Thank you so much, Claire, for being vulnerable and sharing your heart and your journey. It's beautiful. And I know whoever's meant to listen will listen and watch. And no, it's beautiful.
Sorry about my mess up with the perjury and conspiracy. That's what I go to school. I know it's one of those long words. It was conspiracy.
I love it. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today. If this helped in some way, or if you know of a friend who could benefit, please share it, subscribe, follow, comment on social media. You can find us at Facebook, our website, georgettebeck.com. Thank you. And there's always hope. And don't forget, if you're not following Georgette Beck on Facebook or Instagram, please go ahead and follow. And then please download this show and follow Junk to Jewels podcast with Georgette Beck. We have several guests coming along to share their challenging moments and their inspiration. Thank you for listening and watching. Take care.